Hello everyone, I'm working on the TIE Fighter. I stalled out on TIE Fighter a few days ago because of the laser cannons. Notice the past tense, was trying to replicate the part on that came with the model kit. Then I started looking at reference photos and I found some excellent photos of the studio scale model. The part isn't correct. It's too small, which made me happy because everything I've been trying to do in the same size would not work. Here's what's up. The laser cannons come with the model kit are fine. They're a teeny bit too small. Now, they match what's on the EFF model. And that's probably one of the... Okay, here. Let's start this over. We're going to have a short discussion about the Star Wars model kits. And the studio models they used. The studio models were thrown together fairly quickly. No two were the same. This is very true with the X-Wings and the Y-Wings. The TIE Fighters, that may not be so true about because, well, the Empire could afford good stuff. So they're probably a little bit more uptight with that. Now, when you start looking for reference photos, they're all over the map. Because half the reference photos you pull up are models people built, not the actual studio model itself. Starship Modeler has some photos of the studio model. The problem is they're tiny. They're 150 by 150. You can't blow them up. You can't see any detail. I don't remember what other website it was on, but I'll save the link and I'll put it in the video description if I can remember to. If I don't, one of you will ask for it. This is very true. One of the forums, it was either the prop replica forum or Resin Illuminati. No, it was a prop replica forum. Had some very good photos of the studio model. And those photos are not the same as the EFF model. And I can't tell if they're the same as the ones on Starship Modeler because you can't see those well enough. They show the laser guns larger. The EFF model has them larger than the Fine Molds model does too. If I checked my reference 4 days ago, this TIE Fighter would be ready for paint right now. I didn't check them and I just stopped for a little while until I had a whole day to sit down and work on them. Today I have the whole day, well not the whole day, but a good 7 hours to sit down and work on the TIE Fighter. And, well, when I drop the camera in a minute, you're going to see what I've been doing. There are tools and brass and plastic everywhere. Brass tubing is thinner than plastic tubing. The plastic tubing is way too thick. Okay? So I just gave up trying to use the plastic tubing. The brass tubing's fine. The problem is the brass tubing inner diameters don't match the fiber inner diameters very well. Okay, so that causes a few issues. There is one combination that works beautifully, and that is when the fiber is 1 millimeter fiber, or is it the 1.5? Sorry, it's a 1.5 millimeter fiber meets, and here's the brass tubing. I'm going to put the cheaters on. I've been working on models too much and my eyes don't want to focus. They get lazy. It's 2.38 millimeter by 0.355 millimeter. That fiber, the 1.5 fiber, fits inside this brass tubing beautifully. I mean, it just slides right in. There is little or no room for play. A teeny bit, look, it can even hold it up with just a little bit in there. Okay? So this is a beautiful combination. Now, I have my micrometer out. I measured things. The diameter of this brass tube is a little bit larger than the part that came with the Fine Molds kit. I'm going to get geeky on you guys for a minute. And I know I said I don't like bolt counters, but rivet counting. To me, this isn't rivet counting, and I'm going to explain why in a second. I got the micrometer. It turns out that brass tubing is 1 millimeter, around 1 millimeter in diameter bigger than the Fine Molds part. Now, at 1/48 scale, that translates over to, some of you got it, 48 millimeters. 48 millimeters is 4.8 centimeters, which is 2 inches. So it's 2 inches in diameter too large. Okay? So we're talking about difference between this and this in real life. That's minor. And the larger brass is much easier to work with than the tiny brass. Here's the smaller diameter brass. No, that's the same size. Here's the smaller diameter brass tubing. This is a little bit smaller than the part. Now, when you look at them on the TIE Fighter, this is the important part, and this is why I don't count it as rivet counting and bolt counting. It has to look right on the model kit. If it looks too large, people are going to notice that and go, wait a minute, something's wrong there. If it's too small, they're going to be like, there's no way those laser cannons were too small. I'm getting the feeling that the laser cannons from the Fine Molds kit are too small, and they look that way because you look at the studio model, they're much larger. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go with the larger brass tubing. Now, I'm going to show you what I've tried. Okay? And I'm going to show you the part, which means I got to drop the camera and do a big zoom. So let's drop the camera down to the workplace. Let's do a tight zoom. There we go. That's as much zoom as I can get. I have a little pill box here. I keep all my small, fine parts in so I do not lose them. Okay? This, it's off frame. This is the Fine Molds part. Okay? I tried to modify one of those parts. It's not here anymore. I tried to, there were two of them, I only have one left. I tried to modify one of these so I could run fiber through it, and it just collapsed once I drilled it out. Is that as far as this camera goes? That's as far as it goes without the remote. Let's see what the remote can do to it. There we go. This is tight. That's the biggest zoom I got. Okay. Now, that's the Fine Molds part. This is the part out of the larger brass tubing. And you'll notice it isn't that much difference in size. It looks more like what I find on the studio model too. It's a little bit larger. Okay. Now, the smaller brass tubing, there's what I was cutting on this. Now, one thing you'll notice, the Fine Molds part has these slots. You can see it in the brass a little bit better. But it has slots going around the outside every 90 degrees. And I cut that on this part, but the brass is so thin there that it falls apart while I'm cutting it, and I don't have a tool to cut any thinner than the good old trusty razorback saw. This is the thinnest tool I have for cutting. Okay? Hence the vise. I've been cutting everything with the vise. Now, again, this is a teeny bit bigger than this, but in real life it's only 2 inches in diameter bigger, which really wouldn't stand out that much. This is about the same, a little bit smaller than this part. Another thing I noticed, this ring around it isn't there on the studio model. It's on the EFF model, and it's on the Fine Molds model, but there's this little ring that goes around the outside of this. And good luck on the Fine Molds kit. That's the worst part of this kit I have found, besides the figures. Figures have some horrendous seam lines on them. The worst part on this kit is this ring that goes around the outside of that, because when you cut it off the sprue, you're going to damage that ring, and it's almost impossible not to. Okay? That ring does not really appear on the studio model. I mean, it's there, but it's up flush with the body of the TIE Fighter. It is not sticking out like it would be on this one. On the EFF model, it's sticking out as well. On the studio model, as far as I can tell, it is not. Okay? So I'm wondering what the EFF model and Fine Molds were looking at, because there's some inconsistencies here and there anyhow with the solar panels. I'm going to go ahead and go with the bigger part. In fact, I've got two cut that are pretty much identical right here in shape and length. Ignore the bend on this one. It's the tape. I put some heavy tape on it to get it to stay in the vise so I could cut it. But they're pretty identical. They're pretty cleaned up. I got to shorten them a little bit. or drill better holes in the TIE fighter itself. Okay? Now, I can get some rings to go around it from plastic tubing just fine. Another thing I actually tried was a pop rivet. I cut a pop rivet in half, but that's way too big. Okay? Way too big with the ring on the back. If I was building a larger scale model, though, the pop rivet would be the way to go. This would be beautiful for that, because it's perfect. Okay? Just absolutely perfect. Well, anyhow, I'm going to stop. The wife just came home from work. We're going to stop and get some food. And I'll come back and show you guys what I'm doing with these when I'm done. Okay? But they're pretty well, I'm quitting on them right now. And I will talk to you guys later. Let me get this thing stopped. That is a major accomplishment right there. Major, except for I see this one got off it on its alignment just a teeny bit. There we go. The reason I say major is I tried 5 or 6 different things to get that right. It's right. It's just the way the video camera is. Because if I start moving it around, it's angle on the camera. Because in person they are the exact same length, and that doesn't look like they're the same length. It looks like they're out of orientation. But one is a little out of orientation. I'm gonna have to put some more glue on that, but that fixed that. Yep, that fixed it. Now they're not done. They got fibers to string through them yet. Okay, I'm gonna string some fibers through them. I'm going to put a little bit more super glue on them. You can see I stressed the plastic pretty hard right there, getting them in there. Now, according to what I saw in the studio model, this lip shouldn't, there's a little edge right there. That edge actually is there. But these are almost completely taking up the whole bottom radius. And the kit part wouldn't do that. Okay, to correct myself, the website for the studio scale photos is Starship Modeler, and not studio scale, the studio model. Starship Modeler and Model Magic. Okay, I'm going to put links to them on the video. I bookmarked them. So you guys can see what I mean. The parts that come with the kit just aren't right. These aren't quite right, but they're closer. Okay, the kit parts are too small. And these, wow, there's a lot of drilling and filing and sanding to get those to work right. You can see the holes on the back side where the brass is coming in. It doesn't go all the way through. I needed to leave them out because they stick out fairly far. The guns are supposed to stick out fairly far. But again, that is a milestone, because there is at least 6 hours into that, because I wanted them to look just right. I'm taking photos for Facebook and Scale Model Addict. But anyhow, I'm very happy that that's done. I can start wiring now. I got to figure out my resistance, because I'm going to use 3 volts for a power supply, and all the LEDs are 1.8 volts. All of them are 1.8 volts. So I have to have a resistor on every LED. There is 3 I think there's 3 LEDs in the entire model. So 2 AA batteries will power this thing for hours on end. Okay? So let me get going on this. Tip of a #1 X-Acto knife blade for scale. Big ass fingernail for scale that needs to be cut. I have to cut my fingernails once a week or they look like this. Too much information, I know. Anyhow, I'm going to get to work. I will be back later. Okay, I just went to the LED Wizard, and I need 68 ohm LEDs. Those are fairly common, I think. 67, 68, somewhere in there. So I'm going to go get them and get going. If I can't find 68, a little bit over is fine. I think 72 ohm is a common resistor. I will come back and let you guys know what I'm using. Okay. And to find it, just type LED Wizard into Google. It pops up. If I can remember, I'll put a link to it. If not, someone remind me, and after you remind me, I'll put a link to it. Okay, let me go get my resistors and get soldering, more soldering fun.